Hey people, how you doing? Welcome. It's Tuesday. We're live. It's 8 o'clock again. So this is the Sports Therapy Association podcast or video cast because it goes out live on YouTube. So if you do want to join us live, if you're listening to the podcast and you want to join us live, then all you need to do is go to the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel, and that's where we will be every Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And that's what we've done for the last 106 episodes or 106 weeks, more or less. And yeah, you're welcome to join us live. If you are listening to the podcast, then do us a favor, if you could, just leave a rating, leave a little review. As long as they're both like 5 stars and good, then that would be lovely, because it really helps the wonderful messages from our speakers and guests just reach a larger audience. So please do that. It takes like 30 seconds if you use an iPhone. If you haven't sold your soul to the devil and you use Android, then it takes a little bit longer, but that's the price of having a good soul. So I think you have to go to iTunes still or something. But yeah, please do leave the rating and review. It's really important. So where are we? We are at our final episode for June, where the focus has been on business. And thank you, first of all, for the messages, the emails. Never feel silly about writing an email. The number of emails I get, we say, oh, I feel a bit silly writing this, but it's been really useful listening to last week's episode. Nothing silly about that at all. As with everybody, I think, or most people in the world, imposter syndrome runs rife in me. So it's always nice to hear that actually something's been useful and someone's enjoyed listening to it, especially as the live listeners are a little bit less the last few months. We might talk about that. Maybe it's a sign of the times, as Gary says. Gary Benson's in the house here, says lots of members saying they're working at capacity and feeling the strain. So maybe giving up an hour of your Monday night is not a best way of chilling out, is it? You just want to disconnect. So I understand that. It's fine. That's okay. But I still like recording it live because I think we just get something a little bit more dynamic. And it's lovely if you do manage to come along and join us live. You can network and talk to regional reps and that sort of stuff. So anyway, we're doing a focus on business. Let me just bring up who we've had this month so far. Let's sort this around a little bit so that I'm made small and the person's made big. There we go. Right. So just a little recap on what we've had so far, in case you're listening and you didn't catch up with the last 3 episodes. So we started off the month of June with our focus on business with Tim Allardyce was here on how to build a successful clinic. And Tim went through the 5 mistakes that therapists, soft tissue therapists typically make when trying to make their clinic successful. Great episode, great opener. If you don't know Tim Allardyce, and a wonderful human being, really experienced therapist. He's an NHS England clinical entrepreneur, and also you may know him as the founder of Rehab My Patient. So the stuff which Tim comes out with is wonderful and presented in such a nice, as always, kind of accessible way. Loads of little clinic gems, little pearls of wisdom, which a lot of people who join us live are going, I need to do that. I'm not doing that. So give that a listen if you want to. If you want to listen to it, you can go to YouTube to watch the video, or just go to your podcast app. It will be there. Just look up the Sports Therapy Association podcast. We then moved week 2 into how to optimize client experience. And that was with the wonderful Gemma Oliver, creator of the Physio and Therapist Support Group on Facebook. And also Andy Hosgood, who's the founder of Elevate Your Clinic. Both have been on the show before, and they gave us again some wonderful information about how to ensure that your client is getting as good an experience as you might think they are, but maybe they're not, all the way from marketing through to when they've left the clinic and you're doing your follow-up, or are you doing your follow-up? So another, again, really good episode, and thank you for everybody who took the time to email me, Matt at the STA106 about giving me some great feedback. Last week, we had social media marketing for business. So focusing particularly on a topic which a lot of you have asked to hear about. We had the wonderful Gilly Woodhouse in the house. That sounds terrible. I'll have to edit that out. But yeah, she was here. Gilly is a mentor and business development strategist. And again, just years of experience of helping businesses. She is primarily well known in the osteopathic community. But the gems that come out, as she said, can work with any soft tissue therapist. She does online courses, and there's details on the show notes for last week of how to get her 90-day protect your business against the recession, which we talked about a little bit as well. Not to put a down or anything, but both Tim Allardyce and Gilly Woodhouse are kind of suggesting, like a few other people, that things are going to get tight. We've seen the petrol going crazy. And I don't want to get everyone depressed now, but it's being prepared, isn't it? We might even talk about that tonight as well. Talking of which, Or like I say before, if you want to listen to it, you can go to the YouTube. It's all there. I recommend watching the videos because great looking guests we have on the show, so you may as well. It's lovely to see the show live, but you can listen to your podcast, and if you want to find a link, then go to the sta.co.uk and you'll see there's links at the top of the page. When you click on the podcast section, you'll see there's a Spotify link, an Apple Podcast link, a Google Podcast link, a Pocket Cast link. So something there for everybody. Okay, right, we continue the final part of our focus on business for June, and we are welcoming back James Chapman, who, I can't believe it, it was January 2021, I think. So a year and 4 or 5 months ago since I last spoke to him, which is just, I don't know whether I've been having fun or just time's flying, but it seems way, a very, very long time. And James was here in episode going back now 35, was it, in my crib sheet? Yeah, 35, long time ago. And was talking about mental health at first aid. And it was focusing on the course that he teaches. And we had some great feedback from that. And also on the show tonight, we've got somebody, one of the STA members and regional reps, Emma Wardle, is joining us, who you might remember from episode 75, which was November last year, where we had an amazing safety in practice, focusing particularly on female sports massage therapists, which Emma was part of. And I recommend you check that out as well. That was episode 75, amazing episode. For everybody to have a wake-up call about what it can be like being a female therapist. And also, it's not just female therapists, therapists of whatever gender put themselves in danger all the time, and it's how to note it, avoid it, what to do if it happens, communication, all those sort of things. So it was a great episode. So yeah, they're both here. We're going to be talking about mental health for business, looking after yourself, which is obviously a massive topic. And like Gary Benson says here, let's just bring up Gary's message here. Gary Benson, founder of the STA, says he's talking about already feeling stresses of the cost of living increases and the uncertainty of clients booking in. It is stressful times, as Gary says. So this is hopefully going to help a lot of you look out for signs of mental health problems, how to deal with if it happens, where to go, and all these sort of questions. And I'm really looking forward to bringing our special guest, James Chapman, up, which is what we're going to do now. So let me hide this. Let me get this off the screen, and we'll bring up our guests. James, how you doing?
Hello. Hi, Matt. How are you?
And Danielle. How should I split this out? Should we go for Charlie's Angels look? I'm not sure about that. I'm going to have to move me. I think we'll do that. That's nice. How you doing? Emma? Emma, you okay?
Hello.
You hear me? How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Because you did James's course, didn't you? How long ago was that?
I did, yeah. So I took his course, I think it was March 21 to last year.
There we go. Does it feel that long ago, or is it just me who's wondering where the months have gone?
It does feel quite a long time ago, to be honest.
Oh, it's just me then.
Refresher soon, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that. And James, yeah, it's been a year and a half since we've chatted. It is crazy how time's flying by. Maybe it is the pace of life, and we've just got so much going on. I don't know whether it's part of getting older, whatever it is. But like Gary says, have you noticed, obviously you work a lot with therapists, you work with a lot of people regarding mental health issues. Is it just a thing that each generation says, or every decade people say, or are things actually getting more difficult and tricky for us now and triggering mental health issues?
Yeah, things are definitely getting worse. And I get asked this question a lot, you know, is it the fact that people are talking about it more, which is why poor mental health is on the increase? And definitely there are more conversations around it, which is great. But, you know, the statistics on suicides don't lie. You know, suicide in particular for young women under 25 since 2012 has gone up by 93.8%. So a huge amount. Self-harm, eating disorders through the pandemic, you know, has had a massive impact. You know, in our lifetimes before the pandemic, 1 in 4 people will suffer from poor mental health, have a diagnosable mental health condition in any 1 year, and during the pandemic that rose to almost 50%. So Yeah, it's a big problem, and I've been really busy the last year because of it. So,
how do you? I mean, I've got so many questions here, and thank you for everyone who emailed questions in, and Emma as well. Obviously, you may well have questions as you're catching up with James now, and I have questions for you. But I'm interested straight away with somebody working with people who are distressed and suffering from mental health issues and problems. How do you manage to keep yourself animated and not bring it all home, James, and kind of bring you down?
I think it can be difficult, you know, because I'm definitely a sensitive person. You know, I'm someone that really, I think I can definitely empathize with people. And, you know, one of the things with that, which is what we teach on the course, which is what I learned years ago when I studied psychotherapy, is non-judgmental listening. So how you can actually have, you can communicate with someone, but still keep really safe boundaries. You know, so a good example of that is normal chit chat. Someone says something to you that's uncomfortable or painful for them. You know, as a caring, nice person, you want to say something back to make them feel better. You might give them some advice, and you're going to get emotionally involved in that. Whereas with non-judgmental listening, so someone's on your couch, they're telling you about something traumatic for them, something personal, something uncomfortable, and then you're able just to listen to them, let them have their truth, you know, stay with them, but actually still keep those boundaries, you know. So there's a degree of separation, you know, but it is difficult. I mean, I do things like I finish work, I have my work clothes, and as soon as I get home, I will change. You know, so it's more to just having conversations. I think it's, you know, you have to do as much as you can really to separate, you know, because it's so easy to take your work home with you, mental health, and also when I'm doing therapies, you know, it's like, you know, when you're doing therapies, you know, you're giving your all to that person for that time that they're with you. And then actually looking at your previous podcasts, it kind of brought to mind the vast amount of work that we do as therapists to, you know, to was it client satisfaction, optimizing client experience, you know, social media and marketing, you know, other things that take up vast amounts of time. So it's really hard to separate and switch off. Really
Very interesting. I love it's so interesting hearing you say like change your clothes, and there's probably loads of little tips which I imagine are given on your course about how to look after yourself, and it's finding what works for you because it must be such an individual thing. I mean, I'm really interested whether soft tissue whether I don't know whether we can generalize about what professions are more stressful. Obviously, some obviously are more stressful when you're dealing with life and death. But I get the impression, I'm going to direct it towards you, Emma, if I may, that most soft tissue therapists are pretty sensitive people anyway. Because if you want, I've always said this, if you want to lay your hands on somebody and rub them with oil for a living and get that close to somebody, then the chances are that you've got a lot of, you can empathize a lot and you want to do that. You want to make people's health better. So, Emma, do you think that soft tissue therapists are prone maybe to taking on too much on board and getting too sensitive and maybe running into mental health issues?
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I've definitely always been a sort of an empath. So I love working with people. And even before I started my role as a sports therapist, I worked in care. So I, again, worked kind of in people's homes, looked after elderly, looked after, again, people with MS, things like that. And I found that really hard physically and mentally. But most of my jobs have been very people focused. And that's because, you know, I like people, but I do tend to find that, yeah, you probably do take on a little bit too much. And maybe that's just down to kind of personality. I've got, you know, almost 10 years clinical and sporting experience, and you know, you go through all kinds of things. Obviously, there's different stresses in sport where it's a little bit more acute, and you deal with a lot of things that if you haven't dealt with that before can be, you know, quite shocking. And I think that's kind of hard to maybe go away and debrief. That's quite important. And then in the clinic, I think definitely over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of people who've just come to me, they have come to me, for maybe an injury or an issue, but a lot of my clients have struggled with COVID and their mental health and maybe just getting out and seeing someone. Sometimes it's just, they come to me, I think, to just talk for an hour more than anything else. And, they'll bring up, things that have been stressful for them, and maybe they're not working, or, they've got issues, family with, people being made redundant, all that kind of stuff. So I think definitely over the last 2 years, I've kind of had a lot of clients that it's been, beneficial to have the experience on the course, to be able to talk with them, give them some guidance, give them some advice, and also taking away stuff for myself as well.
I remember, I don't know whether you had this, but in therapy, I learned with a guy from Brighton. Shout out to Michael Gibbons, actually, in Brighton, who quite a few people train with, been in the game for ages. But I remember still is, never fails to go to Glastonbury. Total hippie, loves his music, and is just always there. But he used to take us for like sessions in wigwams in kind of the park in Brighton. It was just beautiful. But he was always saying, after your treatment, make sure you've wash your forearms down with water, shake it out, just give yourself 5-10 minutes just to relax and recenter yourself, because when you are relaxing someone else and kind of get rid of their energy and whatever you want to call it, it's going to drain you as well. It's like when you're laying hands on someone, if you make them feel more relaxed, chances are you're going to build up sign of stress inside of you, whether it's physical or mental. And I always took that away from me. And I caused bosses who made me have back-to-back sessions later on in my career hell, because I was saying, no way. I'm not finishing with someone and then going straight to, oh, Mr. Jones, thanks for joining us. Come in here. No way. I need my 5 minutes just to sit down in clinic, just relax myself mentally, chill out, change the song. And I've always done that. And as soon as, I think that's a really important thing to do. But I don't know whether in this day and age, when people are chasing money and trying to squeeze things in and pay the mortgage or pay the rent, sometimes these little things which can make your day much more less stressful actually disappear, and we start just filling it up and emptying the tank, as it were. COVID obviously has placed a lot of pressure on people, therapists, and also just the general state of the world today. I mean, James, you speak to a lot of people. Do you see that environmental stress around people can also create stress in that person? Even if your life isn't too bad, all the stuff and manic stuff that's going on around us at the moment, can that have an effect on people as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think world events had a huge impact. The pandemic, Ukraine, cost of living crisis, and just the general kind of, there's quite a polarization, I think, in politics, and it's quite, go on social media, people can be really quite cruel, and I think it's really difficult times that we're living in.
So I agree. Yeah, it's all very polarized. And we talked about social media last week and saying, yeah, you got to get on it, you got to do this. But I think we'll probably talk later on. Oh, we can talk about it now. Social media. I mean, it's a massive topic. There's so much we could talk about. But I personally think that let's pick on Instagram. Instagram creates this fake world, which I imagine can cause so much torment for so many people who are chasing these dreams, thinking everyone else has got it like this, and it's notoriously false and fake. Yeah. But is that a factor as well? Either of you, do you find that social media can make life for therapists professionally more tricky because they're seeing all this fake life elsewhere? Either of you, jump in.
Yeah, I find social media, I try and be quite active on it. I've got LinkedIn, I've got Facebook, and I've got Instagram and Twitter. So I have that for business. Yeah, and I do find that, it's great if I have the time to, schedule posts, get posts out, do things like that. But obviously if you're busy, you kind of fall behind with that. And I think sometimes I follow a lot of other clinicians, therapists, all sorts of physios, things like that. And I find that you can get a bit bogged down with sort of if they're posting more and what should you be posting and what kind of is attracting people. And I think it's the whole thing of, you know, are you as busy as someone else in clinic? Are you not having as many clients? I think there's a lot of kind of that, and seeing, you know, if you see that someone's, you know, put on their diary and it looks like it's full, I think there's a lot of things that if social media wasn't there, I think would help a lot. I mean, we use it, you know, now in a positive way as well, but I think there are, you know, a lot of people get quite hung up on it, and this is from me talking to other therapists and other people I'm involved with as well. And I think they, you know, we have conversations about, you know, are we posting enough? What things should we be posting? How do we engage people? It's just, I think it's an extra stress on, you know, what you're already business and everything else you have to do if you're running it by yourself. But I think, yeah, also can be really good for, I'm in lots of community groups, so locally to me. So I post in there once a month, or, you know, every Monday. I think they allow for free, you know, it's free business advertising. And I've had, you know, a lot of people that have been in the right place at the right time, and they've just been looking for, you know, either sports massage, either an injury assessment, a physio, and they're kind of like, oh, well, you just popped up and it was, you know, suited me. So I think there are definitely pros and cons, but I think kind of getting some time away from it is important as well.
You sound quite organized, so you mentioned like automating stuff sometimes and just having particular times of the week, and that sounds really balanced. But obviously, it's when the balance goes, doesn't it? James, how many times do you say to people, just put your phone away, mate? It's just you're killing yourself. Stop the social media. I imagine it must be quite common, but as a driver,
all the time. I mean, it's, you know, as Emma said, social media can be a double-edged thing. There can be some really good protective factors there, you know, community aspect and stuff like this, you know, it can be actually really, really good. But then there's also that negative, that kind of self-image thing. There was a recent report, I think it was 2020, by the UK Anti-Doping Agency. I don't know whether you saw it, and they said like up to 1 million people are using iPads, so image and performance enhancing drugs, so steroids and stuff. 1 million people, like, in the UK. And you know, I've had experience of that. I didn't know how much. I used to work in a gym up in Kingsbury. It's gone now, so I can mention it. And I had a problem with one of the PTs there, and I got on well with him, and he started acting really strangely towards me and really aggressive. And then this other PT was like, oh, he's on steroids. And then she was like, oh, you know, so and so, and then this one, and then this one, and this one. I was like, really? You know, and so there's a lot of, you know, body image issues that are going on, you know. And in my local gym, you know, you kind of like, I don't know, I mean, you can't really guess, I suppose, but you know, with that, up to 1 million people using these things and all the side effects that come from that. And this was the stat I gave about suicide in young women, and the reason for that increase is because of social media. You know, it's all of that image pressure and whole Love Island type you know, fantasies of how we should look and how we should act and what things we should have and what clothes we should wear. And it's you know, it's a false reality. It's a false reality, and people are on it all the time, you know. And you know, the problem with that is people aren't getting good rest. They're not getting proper sleep. You know, they're getting really stressed, and it has a huge impact on people's lives. So as a therapist, I work a lot with really high-end drug rehabs, and one of my jobs, my main job there, is to really help people to relax, to sleep better, so that the living psychotherapist, the psychiatrists, the nurses that are there, it makes their jobs much better because the people are more relaxed. And this is people really high net worth, royalty, that kind of people that are, you know, super mobile in that they can live wherever they want and stuff like that, do whatever they want. But then they've got themselves in a mess because they don't know how to relax. you know. So one of the things that I'm there for, probably the main thing, is to help them to relax, get them to sleep better, so that all the other talking therapies will help, you know. So yeah.
It's tricky to generalize, but I want to try and ask both of you whether some recommendations on, or maybe some potential pitfalls specifically for soft tissue therapists. We're talking about people who for a living lay their hands on other people, and these days it's not just laying hands. In theory, if you're kind of following the evidence a little bit, then depending what your remit is, you're probably talking and listening as well, which provides stresses as well, and maybe prescribing some exercise and all sorts of stuff. But do you think there's some things that soft tissue therapists should look out for to avoid running into problems with mental health, even though it's such an individual thing? But are there some red flags that maybe, or some advice either of you could give to make sure soft tissue therapists don't go down that rabbit hole and end up with bigger problems?
Well, maybe I'll go first. I mean, for me, I mean, it's really difficult because, you know, as a therapist, obviously you're worried about clients. You want to give your clients the best experience and try and fix them as much as you can in a short space of time. So it's really difficult. And I used to find that, you know, you greet someone, you're watching them walk into the room, you do your verbal assessment and take some notes, and then you do a physical assessment, and then you get them on the couch, and then you do whatever you're going to do, and then you do your post-treatment assessment, and then write your notes. And then where I was in clinic regularly, it would be one client and then another client, you know, so you're really rushing to do that. And I would do that for 5 hours straight, you know, 3 times a week, often in the evening, start at 5 or 4, finish at 9. So no meal until like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And it's and then go home. You might be completing some notes. You might be trying to do a bit of social media in as well, eating late, family commitments and stuff like that. And it's very easy to burn yourself out. And I used to do every 20 treatments that I gave, I would get a treatment myself, whether I felt I needed it or not. And I was really clear on that for many years. Now it's very difficult to do that. You know, self-care is really hard. It's hard to look after yourself anyway, because I think even if you know, and I know this is what we teach on the course, and I've known this for many years, is that I have to look after myself. If I don't look after myself, you know, things can go bad. But in reality, it's very difficult because I've got 3 kids who are under 10. I've got a wife. I've got an expensive house that I rent that I'm trying to buy. And, you know, we're living in a time when the cost of everything has just gone absolutely bananas, and self-care is expensive. Other therapists who I might have got a swap from in the past are really busy. So trying to coordinate all of that, and I might need to pay for therapies, and I'll pay what someone pays me, but I'm like, oh, can I afford to do that? You know, it's like, oh, maybe I'll wait another week. And it's so easy to do that. So I think, you know, and again, it's like giving your all, overworking, you know, coming home with sore thumbs or sore elbows, or, you know, lower back pain, or realizing that you haven't drunk enough because you've just been 100% focused on each client. It's really, really difficult. So I think as many self-care strategies as you have, and it's a personal thing, you know, what works for you. You know, washing, definitely, you know, getting other people's skin off you, making it a ritual, changing your clothes. But I think you can kind of, it's easy to see sometimes the red flags for other people to see them rather than you. So in our course, we talk about the stress container, what happens when it overflows. So, you know, stress comes into our life and we have a lot of stress, and often with stress we don't name it. Stress can often be a badge of honor, you know. So, and especially if you're the kind of person that has, when it comes to stress, you can have the mindset of like, it's a challenge, and I'm like that. It's like, yeah, come on, bring it on. Or you can maybe have the mindset of like, stress is like a can of worms, you don't want to go down there, you know. But so it's very easy to take on loads of stress and not actually realize how much you're doing. And if you're working, say, with clients, and you're trying to finish your appointment and the client is slow to get dressed, and they ask you, oh, can you just do a little bit on my forearm, or whatever it might be, and you're giving them an extra 5-10 minutes, over the course of a week, over the course of a month, over the course of 3 months, that's a whacking great big amount of time that you're not actually getting paid for, and you're not your time, your energy as well. So I think it's really, really easy to do too much. And when it comes to stress, I talk about like the stress signature, which is unique to all of us. And it's like, what happens when we get stressed? So I know when I get stressed, I start swearing a lot. I'll swear in front of my kids, which I try not to do. I might start speaking to my wife in a disrespectful way. I try not to do that as well, but you can get a bit snappy and stuff like that. And my wife, I'm really lucky, she knows that if I start doing these things, that she'll tell me, look, hey, you're not looking after yourself, you need to slow down, and remind me about how much I have been doing. Because I think it's so easy just to get caught up in life and not realize how much you're doing, how much you're giving, how much time you're on your feet, how many evenings and weekends that you're working, giving your energy into, as you said, making other people feel better. And I'm 100% with you. I think if you're working as a soft tissue therapist, unless you're really committed to what you're doing, you'll get found out. It's like you won't be a good therapist, you won't be an effective. I think you have to be sensitive, you have to be a kind of person that wants to help other people, because if you don't, your clients won't want to have a treatment with you. And I think we've all maybe been to therapists who their heart isn't in it, it's not something that they want to do. So
that's really interesting about you saying that other people will recognize it, that often we don't realize it because we're inside there kind of like getting stressed out and swearing and doing this, and we don't notice it. It's somebody. So that's kind of seems to be one of the keys, is having someone else who you will listen to when they say, you know what, you're acting a bit weird here, you really snapped at other person, what's going on? Emma, have you found that in your life that's a useful thing, of where you've got someone else, maybe a good friend or somebody or partner, who can actually say, you're right, you're acting a bit weird?
Yeah, I think so. It's really interesting about what James was saying, because he's teaching the mental health stuff all the time, and it's interesting that he kind of says that it's almost like using the analogy of we know when we're seeing clients, if you give them a rehab plan, if you give them physio, they kind of know what they should be doing. It's kind of the same sort of thing, but it's having the time to actually do it and implement it in life. And it was interesting that you kind of think someone, maybe if you teach mental health, you're going to be really good at doing all that yourself, but it still is, you still have your own life stresses, like kids, other things, and you can't always find the time. I personally, I've changed in the 10 years, I've changed quite a lot. So when you first start out as a therapist, you tend to just work all the hours you can get. I used to do, at a bigger club, I used to, work full time there. I'd work in sports for Saturdays as well. I'd sometimes work, 7 days a week, and you kind of want to do that to build up your client base, build up your reputation, things like that. But I struggled with just doing too much. At the bigger company, they'd book 10 sessions back to back, and whether that's hopefully not 10 sports massages, but even if that's physio as well, it's a lot of physical and emotional time going into that. And I used to find I probably at the end of the day, I didn't even want to talk to anyone because I was just so emotionally like brain fried. And since kind of, in my journey, kind of coming towards, first 5 years, I was probably doing a lot of that. And then I kept getting quite ill all the time just because I wasn't taking enough time, having enough time off. And that's kind of when I started to, think about leaving working for other people, and just, do my own clinic time. And that's given me, I still do work full time, but it's much more flexible. You can choose to. I do work 2 late evenings and sometimes a Saturday morning, but I feel like I'll only put 6 or 7 in a day, and kind of have gaps in between. Even before COVID came along, I would actually leave half an hour between clients anyway. So that wasn't something that I newly introduced because of cleaning with COVID. That would just be my thing. And I also find that I tend to, for me, kind of self-help stuff, I tend to do, if I'm stressed, I'll try and, take time to read a book, try and go to bed early, kind of shut my phone off. I try and have like a limit of when I will reply to clients, and things like, I do Headspace. I kind of try and put a lot of things in around kind of, clinic, and make sure you are taking enough time for yourself. Because again, some of my clients, over the last few months especially, I've had kind of some difficult sort of clients that have had a lot of things going on. So it kind of comes all back to the kind of like the, with clients' biopsychosocial model and what's going on in their life. And I think if you take that on, I've had some people, with cancer. I've had some people who've, lost. I've actually got a friend who sees me who lost her partner at 32, had a, cardiac arrest while he was out cycling. And I remember her coming to see me, and I literally had just put my hands on her and she burst out crying. So kind of dealing with all things like that, I think there's definitely boundaries with clients. I find that you can be empathetic and sympathetic, and I tend to talk with my clients quite a lot. I think I don't have many sessions, where we're just an hour in silence, especially if it's physio stuff. And a lot of my clients tend to speak a lot to me. So it is kind of, there's definitely a boundary though. I'm always sticking to my time. I try and, it's kind of that boundary between being professional, but kind of being personal, and people like you for that reason. So I kind of get quite a lot of reviews, with things like, really friendly, but professional, and kind of, explaining things. So yeah, I think it's a hard one to get right. And I think probably as you progress in a career as a sports therapist or a soft tissue therapist, I think that kind of comes with the territory a bit. I think you start out a bit kind of scrambled and maybe struggling with finding your own routine and finding enough time, to run your business, see your clients, have enough time. And definitely as I've got to mark next year, I feel like I'm sort of at a level that is, I look back on when I started and I think, God, how did I ever do all of that? So I think it's good if you can reflect back as well, and maybe after, each week with clients or each month, seeing if you can take a bit of time and see if you're kind of happy with, how many clients you've seen, what you've done for yourself. If there's anything, I think kind of reflective practice is quite nice as well. Sometimes I think we're all so busy, we don't really actually maybe sit and take the time to think about, what might be, working for us or not working for us.
That's amazing. There's so much in there which you've kind of mentioned that you do to stay, on a pleasant, relaxed path. How did you find out about that? Were there things on James's course which was suddenly like, oh, I should be doing that? Or have you had a mentor? Or how did you arrive at where you are today? Which sounds very organized, very impressed.
I am quite an organized person, so I think personality comes into it a little bit. I've had stuff in the past where I've suffered with anxiety quite bad, and so for a while I used to see a psychotherapist. I used to have sessions, talk through with them. I think they've given me some coping mechanisms, things like that, things you can be doing. But also on James's course, I think was really great to kind of I liked how it was kind of really interactive as well. And obviously a lot of people on his course, we're all we weren't all, I think Becky and myself who are on it were sports therapists, but I think there were a lot of other professions. And it was really interesting to hear, some of their stories and what what they've maybe dealt with personally, and what they're dealing with maybe with clients or things that they're seeing. And I just think the course kind of, it almost gives you, a couple of days off the clinic for one, and away from clients, and being able to actually focus in on helping yourself and helping others. So I found it really beneficial on both parts, actually. I know a lot of it was how to sort of implement it into your business and help your own clients, but I kind of found that generally the kind of just listening and being non-judgmental, things like that were kind of really key, and almost being maybe a little bit more like that with myself, if that makes sense. I tend to be very, I think people who are self-employed probably tend to be very hard on themselves. I think they always need to be doing more. I think that's definitely a theme when I speak to, I'm in touch with other physios, other therapists. I think we find it very hard to say, okay, well, I'm happy with what I'm doing. I think there's always like a next thing, probably. For us, I find being self-employed, we tend to have that, I should be doing more, I should do this, I should do that. I kind of think I myself I'm very bad at stepping back and thinking, oh, well, actually, look how far I've, come in 10 years, and, trying to just kind of settle with that a bit. But it's easier said than done, definitely. I think it's taken me quite a while, and probably as I've got older, I'm 31 next year, and I started, in my early 20s. So I think some of that does come with life experience, dealing with other things, a mixture of stuff, really, I would say, and having good friends and family around that I definitely talk to, and they're kind of supportive, and you offload and talk through things, which I think is important.
Very interesting. So James, you're there nodding in agreement. Do you see this quite a lot with therapists who sign up for your course, which I guess people might think, oh, this is to help your clients, to help your patients, but in actual fact, it's kind of an introspective thing where you start analyzing yourself, and that helps therapists.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first part of the course is all about what is mental health, understanding your own processes, what it means to you, and self-care, because it's that old oxygen mask thing. It's like you're in the plane's going to crash, you put your own oxygen mask on, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after others. And I think what Emma was saying was really interesting. It's very hard to do that as a self-employed person and as a caring person, and thinking back to the red flags again, Emma, talking about boundaries with time, and that's one of the red flags actually I see, that when things are getting a bit much in clinic, I find that I want to give too much, I want to give more, and it's actually, no, that's enough. That's enough for now, and that will do. That's my time, and looking after that boundary, and my note taking as well. I know when it's time to do less, because my note taking after a session is like, and it's not as detailed and as good as it should be. And it's it's hard for me to admit that, but I think it's important to recognize that sometimes when you're there's only a certain amount you give, and it has to be quality, and once that quality kind of goes, then it's like you're not looking after yourself, you're not doing your clients a service either. Really, I mean, they might walk away very happy and rebook for next week, but there's still a level that I think you have to work at. So when it comes to the mental health first aid training, a huge part of it is about yourself, and we talk about the stress container, and that's one thing again that a lot of people don't look at, actually, the things that are stressing them out in their lives, the stress that they have to deal with, social media, getting clients in, am I good enough, doing further trainings, rent, stuff like, I was doing a training today, I do stuff for Waltham Forest schools, and there was a woman there who works in the hair and beauty department, and she's got a couple of clinics, and she's sold one, and she's desperately trying to sell another. And after lunch, she was still on the phone, and the electricity company were trying to take £1,600 out of her account for electricity, because her bills on her salon have gone up so much. And there's all of these other things that are just coming, and switching on the news, and seeing Ukraine, and seeing the stuff that's going on in the UK and America, and proportion, and it's just, you know, it can be overwhelming. And actually to sit and think about actually what is stressing myself out right now, what the stresses I've got in my life, what do I have evidence for, what can I do stuff about, what I can't do stuff about, how can I increase my coping strategies to be able to deal with that, what negative coping strategies have I got, you know, what positive coping strategies have I got that could soon turn negative. I was speaking to Matt earlier saying that I've been doing Olympic lifting for the past few years, and one of the problems is that my positive coping strategy, going to the gym, throwing some iron about, I love it, not looking after myself enough, maybe over exercising a little bit more, and I always stretch before and do lots of mobilization stretching afterwards. I knackered up my knees. You know, so a positive coping strategy can soon turn into a negative strategy if you're not you know, fully conscious on what's going on. And it's that whole thing of someone putting the hamster wheel of stress of life. You know, it's so hard to get off of that when you have all of these things that are happening in your life. And you know, I mean, I do this for a living, you know, talk about mental health and, you know, how you maintain good mental health, both as a mental health trainer and also as a yoga therapist. And I've been working in mental health for almost 20 years and as a massage therapist as well. And it's that hard thing is it's always easier to care for someone else than to maybe look after yourself, you know. And it's that thing of like, you know, you might be able to know what to do, but actually putting it in practice for yourself is hard. And sometimes you've got to flip it and think to yourself, right, if I was saying this to a friend, what would I say to them? And actually apply it to you, because in reality, self-care is difficult. You know, it's difficult.
Very interesting. It seems that a common theme. Go on.
Oh, you go. You can carry on, Matt.
No. I guarantee what you're going to say is more interesting. You go.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that's the biggest thing, you know, James is saying. I think it's really difficult to actually put things into practice sometimes, you know, no matter if you think, you know, people always say to me, being a sports therapist, my clients, they'll go, oh, well, obviously you get no injuries and you stretch every day and you drink this much water. And I'm like, I'd love to say that that's my life the whole time, but you know, realistically, it's not. So I think it is, again, you kind of just have to think, you have to, even if you know you struggle with those things, just really trying to set aside some time, you know, to put certain things in practice. I think for me, definitely over the last couple of years has been really tough. I think that the COVID, you know, running my own business and not being able to work for about 8 months, I think really struggled in 2020. And I think probably James's course came at a good time, kind of coming out March 21, really trying to kind of gain a bit more clarity, because I struggled massively myself, actually, not being able to work. I did lots of volunteer stuff. And would help in the community and do things like that, but just not being able to run your business. I was lucky enough to get the grants, but again, it's kind of not so much about the money. It's kind of, you know, I like working and I like being sociable. I like seeing my clients. So it was more maybe the interaction side for me as well. But yeah, I think COVID's been the biggest thing for me in sort of 10 years of practice, with, you know, almost being too busy in the earlier stages of, you know, my first 5 years, and then going to almost being, you know, not busy enough. And I think it's kind of a 360 with stress now, because it's sort of like, I've noticed that probably from March kind of onwards, it's been getting busier in clinic. You know, people are kind of coming back a little bit more. I had a lot of people who either, you know, they'd moved or they just didn't have the money. And now I'm seeing kind of a bit of since all the price increases have happened, that's kind of been a big thing as well. I've recently put my prices up in June. I didn't do it in April because I thought everyone's jumping on the 1st of April bandwagon. But those things I know you mentioned, Matt, and they're really key as well. And I've had several conversations with therapists about, you know, should you put your prices up? And, you know, what we've said most people is, if everything else has gone up, if you're a small business and you don't put your prices up, then you're essentially taking a price cut. So it is difficult. I think there's finding again the boundary with, I want to have enough clients and I need to be busy enough, but I also need to afford my own cost of living increases. And I think that's a big battle. And even for me, someone who's been in the industry for 10 years, I've seen over this time, and I've never had an issue with really having to advertise too much or, doing lots of that. It's all been kind of word of mouth, website, Google. It's all been pretty free flow. And I found that, COVID's really put a spanner in the works for that. So kind of even, if you were, used to being really, really busy, it's kind of been a really different time. And I think that's added an extra level of probably mental health for myself, and then trying to but I've stayed I have stayed open. I do know a lot of therapists who've if they're renting, they've had to actually stop. They've just stopped practicing and they've gone into other jobs, which is really sad. And whether they actually come back and open their practice again is another option. For me, I'm really lucky because I have a home clinic on the side of my house, so that's kind of for me, that's the stress that's been taken away, that I don't have costs. But things like electricity, gas, I'm forever washing towels and tumble drying them, so it's there's kind of a lot of things to think about. I think it's been really, really tough, and I think it's been nice. It's been a lot of conversations around it, and Sports Therapy Association have been there a lot, and that's kind of helped with kind of figuring things out and trying to keep going. But I think it is hard. You definitely hit kind of highs and lows with things, so that's I think where James's course, I think doing that, then kind of coming out of COVID in 21 really made me think, these are some things as well I need to try and use with myself a little bit more and be a little bit, kinder to myself. I think that's me. I think probably me, I give more of my time and energy to other people as James does. And it's just trying to have those boundaries for yourself.
It's I've got a little bit of an echo. I'm just gonna wait till it catches up. I might try muting somebody and see if that helps. Any more echo? Any more echo? No, it's gone. I've muted both of you just for a second, so I'm getting echo at my end, but I will unmute you. I just wanted to spend the last kind of 5 minutes time, obviously, as beating us, which is really stressful, but we'll ride through it. That's okay. But I'm interested in something we've mentioned quite a few times is communication is key. A lot of these stresses, and you can avoid going down some pretty nasty dark places if you talk about it with somebody, especially if you talk to a professional or something. I'm interested at what stage medication comes into play. So I'm going to direct a question to James about, I'm somebody, for me, having can't remember if it was 3 and 1 or 2.5 and a half, and that for me, with the lack of sleep and everything, was really stressful. And I got to a stage where I found myself at the GPs totally drained, and after us answering various questions and things, I was put on a course of sertraline for quite a while, and it was probably about a year and a half or something. I was on it for a very low dose, and every time, it's quite funny, every time I thought, I don't need this, I'm fine, I've just got to go to the gym, again, my wife would tell me, because and eventually I noticed I would stop taking it, which they told me never to do. But did I listen? Of course not. And then within a week of not taking it, I would suddenly get really manic and quite hyper and felt like the world was an amazing place to be. And then suddenly I'd have a slump on the other side. And it happened quite a few times where I'd start realizing, I'd wake up going, life is great. I'm feeling absolutely brilliant, and talking faster. And then the next day would be a real come down. But it did serve its purpose. And eventually, as the kids grew up, and I don't know what it was, I came off it. But it helped me get through kind of a real kind of year when things were looking very dark and grey. But how do people know? Is it a case of just going to your GP and having that chat, and then they'll be able to recommend it responsibly? Because I'm just conscious, James, that sometimes people might go down the medication route before they need it, or they could end up whole of their lives taking something. So I'm interested in what you have to say about that. Oh no, I didn't mean to get rid of you. Sorry. We're done there. Sorry, James, absolutely took you off.
That's okay.
Do that.
That's okay. That's fine. So, ideally, medication is important. It's important people get the right medication where necessary, and that it works for them. So obviously you need professional help. GPs are fantastic. They're trying to fix the world in 10 minutes. Often, ideally you'd get prescribed talking therapy, and then medication if needed. Medication is often a quick fix. It can be really, really useful. 25% of people who access services for anxiety disorders are actually addicted to the diazepam family, diazepam, Valium, anti-anxiety pills. Antidepressants work in about 65% of cases, and there's lots of different types of antidepressants, high risk of suicide while you're waiting for them to kick in, and lots of other side effects as well. So medication is really important, but it's really important that actually people get access to talking therapies. And the government in 2008, actually at the time of the last financial crash, came up with improving access to psychological therapy. So this is depending on what's going on, but you'll get assessed very quickly, and you might get face-to-face therapy, you might get online, you might get group, it depends what it is. And that was a really good thing. Now there's 6 month wait for that. 1 million people used the service last year. They want to improve it so that 1.9 million people can use it by 2024. So there's a huge demand on it. So the amount of, so go to the GP, get professional help for sure if you're struggling, 100%. But there are other things that you should also be looking at as well. So communication is really important. Peer group support is really important. Actually talking to people who might be going through similar things to you. Associations like the STA, just being around other people. I found it hugely beneficial doing stuff like this. I do stuff for yoga associations that I'm a member of as well, and just being around people that I can talk to, that I can say, look, I'm having a hard time at the moment, and they're not going to judge me, and they're going to be, it's a valuable conversation. And there are lots and lots of other things, so I would always try and get some talking therapy, because if something's going on, you want to kind of get to the root of it, and if you can have medication, it can make you feel better, and you can recover while that happens. Sometimes you can spontaneously recover. A lot of mental health problems come from social problems as well. So for example, if you're really stressed because your business is going under, and you're feeling anxious, and maybe some symptoms of depression as well, you might be having panic attacks, and you're having a hard time, having some antidepressants, maybe some anti-anxiety medication might help. Having talking therapies might help as well. What's really going to help is speaking to a financial charity who can help you set up a payment plan with your creditors, or whatever it might be. So there's a huge range of things that can be useful. But I'd always say to people, get professional help. But there's a big strain on services. So I work for a large national charity. I do a lot of trainings for them as well, and I train CAMS teams, that's child and adolescent mental health services, CAMS teams. I train the police, but CAMS, CMHT, community mental health teams, these are the people that your GP will refer you to. So I do suicide trainings for them, because they know that someone who's on their books might have a year's wait for whatever psychological therapy it is, might be 2 years for trauma therapy, because there's such a strain on services. So get help, where you need it, and ideally, if you are prescribed medication, you've got to make sure it's the right medication. If it's not, you've got to make sure that gets changed, and not just trust on that process, because it doesn't work for everyone. And in that time when you're on the medication and you're feeling better, this is when you make those changes in your life. You build up these resilience tools, these self-care strategies that we've talked about, reading, going for a walk, maybe joining a community group, or playing a guitar, or whatever it might be, and that's really important to do as well, because you've got to manage it long term. And you know, that's the really, really important thing, I think, is to be able to know what's going on with you, to be able to recognize the warning signs when things aren't going so well, and to take those steps, you know, because it's not, I mean, there are some mental health conditions where you know, like schizophrenia or something, you might be on medication for the rest of your life. That's fine. Doesn't mean to say you can't have a good life, but you're still, whatever it is. And I think mental health is on a continuum, and I think it's really important to be able to manage your well-being. You know, if you're doing okay, you know, it can soon turn into something that's not okay, and you know, life changes very quickly. And at the moment, it's hard times for everyone. It's really hard times, and very different, I think, from the 2008 crash, where as a therapist I'd never been busiest, because I work in central London, have a lot of wealthy clients, and I had all these bankers who were like, oh, we don't know what's going on with the markets, and everyone was worried because of the credit crunch, and I was actually at my busiest. Now it's very different, you know. I'm not getting as many clients as I used to, and my clients are still quite wealthy, so I think it's different times.
Okay, so huge amount of information there. It's amazing. Thank you, James. Obviously, one thing that soft tissue therapists can do is go here, all about the mind. Move across a bit. There we are. So I'm going to put this on full screen, but we can still hear you if anybody wants to talk. But this is the website, James's website, James Chapman, allaboutthemind.com, as it sounds, allaboutthemind.com. And the course that Emma did is still available. How does the course work, James? Is it something that is face-to-face or online, or is it a mixture, or what? How's it work?
Online training, and we do it 2.5-hour sessions, and that would be twice a week over 2 weeks. And online, I do some in-person trainings, but I haven't got any scheduled at the moment. But I do generally put them on for professional associations and things like that from time to time. So I'm doing an in-person one at the moment. Actually, I just finished one today at Waltham Forest Town Hall. But my training's on the website. Online, so.
And do people work through it therefore at their own pace, or is it a set time?
Yeah, it's set time. So we do live sessions, and then there's individual learning in between, which people do. There's an online learning hub, so there's a big thick manual as well, so people can read and do that, and I'll monitor their progress, give support where needed.
There we go.
Thank you. And the manual's a really good resource as well. So it's I think with this training, like with the in-person training, I'm doing one.
Don't freeze now. Just me, or is James just frozen? If it is the podcast, James is just frozen for a second. But Emma was holding up the manual for the mental health and first aid, and we can't. But yeah, we lost you for a second, James. Yes, so all the information is on the website. Yes, people can find about there. And if people want to contact you, there's contact details on the website. I think it says contact James, isn't it?
Yeah,
fantastic. And also, if you're a member of the STA, then there is a discount code. Thank you very much for that, James. And we won't say it out live because there's people listening to here who haven't quite realized that they should be members of the STA yet. But it's not bribing you, but it's one of the benefits of actually being a member of the STA is you do have lovely people like James and other course providers giving discount codes. So we have got that. If you're interested, then contact myself or Gary or Jake or any of the team or your regional reps. Contact Emma if you're in the which rep are you, Emma? You're Southeast, aren't you, or something?
Yeah, so I'm Southeast England rep with, I think with Joanna, and there's a few more of us, and I think now we've merged with London, I think a bit more. So there's a lot of us. Happy for you to reach out if anyone wants to chat.
There you go. This is how you can use your regional reps. Right, so it's 9:06. We've gone slightly over time. As always, thank you to everyone who did join us live. If you're listening to the podcast and you want to continue the conversation, then just go along to YouTube. This is why I use YouTube now, because that's alive forever now. You can go in the comments, write a question. Other people will respond. If you've got a question for James, then you can always use the website, or if you put something in the YouTube comment section, which I think would be useful for James, and I'll let him know. Someone's put this question. But yeah, let the conversation go and continue happening. Don't let it just stop now. So I'm going to sign off the live lounge now. James, thank you so much for your time once again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Emma also, if you guys can stick around just for a couple of minutes when I shut the lounge down, then I'll say thank you to you personally. But for everyone who joined us live and everyone listening to the podcast, thank you very much as always for your support. And that was episode 106. And we moved to July, in case you didn't realize, next month, which means a new focus. And we will move away from business, focus on business, and we're moving to, I'm going to go through the body now. I'm going to work my way through the body. So we're going to start off with the foot and ankle for a month, which has been requested. Some people send me an email saying, when are we going to go back to the body? And I resisted from saying, oh, yeah, because the body and the mind are two separate entities. I forgot about that. Let's concentrate on the body now rather than the mind and stuff. So that's something we'll be covering, I think, as well. But we're going to spend focusing on aspects of looking after the foot and ankle. And I've got 4 great speakers lined up for you. The first, I believe, is going to be Nick Knight, I believe, who's a podiatrist, sports podiatrist, has been on the show before, is going to be talking about an aspect of the foot and ankle, obviously, and then we'll work our way through. And I think if it works well and feedback's good, you know what, then we'll go to the knee and then the hip and maybe the lower back and then the scapula and all this sort of stuff. So I think it will set us up for some quite nice progression through the body, looking at the anatomy, obviously not forgetting about the psychosocial as well. That'll be a big prevalent thing. So that's all for July and onwards. But for now, thank you very much for joining us. Once again, thank you to James Chapman of All About the Mind. And we will see you next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye.